Hello and welcome everybody to today's Solifi webinar, delivering end-to-end transformation with Liventus, Consult Disrupt, and Solifi. I'm your host. I'm Billy Kripe, the Global Vice President of Marketing here at Solifi, and I'm thrilled that you could join us today. Whether you are with us live, thanks for being here, or watching on demand, we appreciate your time and hope you get something out of this conversation. Today, we're going to dive deep into the recent announcements from Solifi about the partnerships with Liventus and Consult Disrupt. We're going to talk about what it means for technology, for modernization, transformation, and service. Here at Solifi, we partner with leaders in equipment finance, auto finance, and working capital in order to innovate and drive progress forward in secured finance, helping you to unlock growth and streamline your operations and ideally future-proof your technology. Before we begin today, a few quick housekeeping items. First, this session is being recorded. The on-demand version of this webinar will be available very soon after we end the conversation today. You can submit questions and we invite you to participate in the discussion by using your Q&A panel in the GoToWebinar application. On the top right-hand corner of your screen, you'll see a little question box. You can submit your questions to anybody on the panel or to all of us, and we will see those in real time. As those questions come up, we will interject them into the conversation as they are relevant to the conversation that we're having at the time, or if we miss them, we'll address them at the end. In the event that we do not get to your conversation, we will follow up with you directly after the webinar. So we do encourage you to engage in the conversation, ask your questions, try and stump the chump or see what it means for you. And we will have a very robust and fun and lively discussion today. Well, with that out of the way, let's get started by meeting our speakers. I'm very thrilled to introduce Dan Levine, President and co-founder of Liventus, Jesse Johnson, President of Consult Disrupt, Christy Reichert, who is running the business consulting and implementations with Consult Disrupt and Liventus, and Chris Davini, who is the Vice President of Equipment Finance at Liventus. Well, gang, with all of the names and titles out of the way, why don't you each give us a little bit of a background on who you are and what you're bringing to the table today. Dan, let's start with you.
Hey, thanks for having me. Dan Levin, President and co-founder of Liventus, and I'm a former engineer turned entrepreneur, I guess. Live in Northbrook, which is a suburb of Chicago. And, as I say that, I must just also mention I'm still not quite over the Bears loss, so no questions about that. but I'll get over it, and I'll pass to you, Jesse.
Perfect. Jesse Johnson, President of Consult Disrupt, been in the equipment finance industry for 20 years. Quick little background on Consult Disrupt. We help equipment finance organizations align strategy, technology, and execution, often by offering like fractional support so teams can move forward and scale without disruption. We work closely with Dan and his team at Liventus and Solifi team on projects, upgrades, and migration. Thanks for having me, Billy.
Thanks for being here. Christy, how about you?
Sure. Hello, everyone. My name is Christy Rigert, and I've been in the industry for 25 plus years. I specialize in CIO type work and activities, tech strategy review, system implementation, project implementation, things of that nature. So thanks for having me.
Thanks for being here. And Chris.
Thanks, Billy. Chris Davini, EVP Solutions with Liventus. Again, 20 years in the industry, similar to Jesse. And I do similar things with Christy, the one she kind of mentioned, but where we kind of partner up, I focus a little more on the technical side. So the implementations, the integrations, the custom software dev, and the strategies around that. At least right now, Liventus is kind of my focus here. So thank you.
Terrific. Well, thank you all for being here today. Jesse, I'll kind of frame this up, and I really want to kind of start with you. 2025, which is just completed, we saw a lot of changes at Solifi. We acquired a number of companies, including LeasePath and Datascan. We announced the start of sunset for some of our on-premises solutions, really urging and prompting customers to make the modernization switch to move those on-prem solutions into the cloud. And there were a host of announcements around new C-suite members at Solifi. So there's a lot of change going on there. How is this new energy landing in the market, or how is the market not responding, not just to Solifi, but to this renewed focus and invigorated emphasis on this technology space?
Yeah, I mean, it's exciting times for Solifi. I mean, bringing on LeasePath and Datascan to, LeasePath's up and coming product in the marketplace on a Dynamics platform, right? So that technology is a little different than traditional Solifi. Datascan, big customer base, right? So it's definitely exciting internally. I can imagine for some of their customers are like, okay, what does this mean to me? How do I get resources and everything else? And that's kind of the basis of this partnership with Solifi and Liventus. Is it's kind of taken that uncertainty, out of the equation for these equipment finance organizations, because we've assisted Solifi with these data conversions, with these upgrades. A lot of the kind of like, okay, what are we doing? How do we continue to run our business? We have quotas to meet, objectives to hit. How do we do that? Upgrade systems, move platforms, and still do our day jobs. And that's what this partnership is about. It's kind of like taking some of that uncertainty out of the equation, Billy, because we've been there before. We have best practices, and we have a seasoned team through, Liventus and Consult Disrupt to support Solifi and their clients.
Taking that uncertainty out of the process that's really important, because these are big systems with high value portfolios, and these are systems that are, not necessarily fragile, but mistakes can be very costly in terms of time and delays. And so giving customers and prospects the confidence that they have, that they can trust the process, I think is really, really important. Dan, when it comes to Liventus and thinking about, trusting the process and giving customers the confidence, how do you all lean in on that in a unique way?
Thanks. So, I think a lot of things that we offer are fairly unique. So we're a technology execution modernization company, right? And we didn't learn equipment finance from the outside. We've lived it really since our inception 24 years ago now. And we, two of our sister companies specialize in equipment finance, one being ECS Financial and the other being Beacon Funding. And so we kind of have this unique perspective when building technology solutions from within for equipment finance, and dealing firsthand with operational constraints and innovative ideas and initiatives. And that that's led us to building and implementing a lot of technology. Can you guys still hear me? Yeah. Okay. Sorry. What was I saying? So that's, we have some new, I was saying it's led us to build some new technology, and we've built technology for a long time in this industry. Some of that stuff is like the accelerators that we are building and have built, like our upcoming credit automation and underwriting system, customer portals, adapting our SparkFlow product that does data warehousing and reporting within equipment finance, all of which, integrate well with core platforms around this industry. So I think the question is kind of what makes some of what we do unique, and I think that's all fairly unique. But I can keep going talking about myself and Liventus. I won't.
We'll get to that, I'm sure. But I really like the idea that you're you're building systems from within. You came to the space from inside the space, and so not only are you bringing the technology acumen, but also the inside experience to see where organizations have come from, and giving you a clear vision of how to get them to those next steps in the future. I really like I like that, and I think that's been one of the driving factors between Solifi and Liventus and Consult Disrupt to say, hey, we need to build out this this collaboration between people who are highly trusted and are highly experienced to give confidence to the industry.
Yeah, and Billy, just to jump,
go ahead.
Just to jump on that real quick. So when Christy and I and the rest of our team are doing discoveries and requirements gathering, there's naturally some those things that we used to do or things that these accounting softwares just don't do. And we don't want to bastardize a platform because you guys want to have standard code. So if it's true customization that needs to be done, that's where also Liventus comes in with our development shop that was born out of the EF industry. So that's a big driving factor, so we can take some of that risk out of these implementations.
That's fantastic, right? Because as you know, as standard as certain processes and workflows may be, everybody's got their own take on it. And from a customer standpoint and a consumer engagement standpoint, and they need those uniquenesses for them to be reflected in the technology that is being deployed or upgraded or modernized.
Absolutely. And they look to Solifi to make that happen. And you guys need to build for the masses. You want to accommodate everyone, but it's just not feasible.
Sure. So Jesse, let's kind of continue on that theme of that modernization piece. You know, we're in 2026 now. How is Consult Disrupt approaching this year differently from previous years? And maybe what are you kind of keeping the same because it's been tried and true?
Sure. I mean, a lot of what we've been adding to, I guess, the equipment finance marketplace over the last couple of years is the concept of fractional resources. When people look at these projects, they're like, okay, who from our team is going to be doing it's not a 9 to 5. People probably work 9 to 7 or 9 to 8. Who's going to be doing our day job plus taking on this new initiative? We have assets like Christy and Chris from Liventus and the rest of our team that have been through these projects. They understand best practices. You can plug us in to pretty much any situation, and you're gathering, 200 plus years of experience. So, it's plugging in resources to, be able to lift the weight and take some of that, like we're on that word uncertainty out of it, because we've been through these projects. We've been through when they get tough, right? We understand the situation, and just leveraging the tenure that we have.
Sure.
If I can just add to that real quick.
Yeah, thanks, Christy.
One of the things that I think makes both of our organizations really special is that not only do we have the project implementation historical background, but many of us have come from the industry. We've worked at equipment finance companies or software provider companies. And I think that really bonds us well together as a team, and then helps us to work with both our clients and software providers like Solifi. So that's one of the things that I find most special about working with both organizations.
Sure. Christy, following up on that, outside of say a shared vernacular, what are some of those things that, having that 200 plus years of combined experience, inside the industry, what are some of the other advantages or things that you're seeing that really create that click, that initial click with customers to build that trust, that relationship?
Vernacular is one thing, but I think just understanding the objectives of any given equipment finance company, right? There's a multitude of things that companies can be doing with their business and what their model and their strategy looks like. And it doesn't take us long to understand that and dive in deep, and then be able to equate that to what does that mean from a tech perspective? What does that mean from a process perspective? How do we execute on that? What's the most efficient way to do those things for the least costly, implementations or projects? So I just think that that's one of the things that our team does really well to bring to the table, is our ability to just jump in there. Jesse mentioned discovery, but also, we've come in a lot of times in firefighting mode in the middle of a project to assist as well. So it's not just start to finish. It's sometimes, hey, can you help? Right. And I think we have the ability to kind of jump in really quick and understand what that looks like, and then see it through to the end, or even just give some advice and get back out. Right. It's really depending upon the situation.
And one example of that is, just real quick, they get handed a document and it's a mapping doc, and they're confused right off the bat. We can come in, we understand systems very well. We understand the data, different products, how they function across the industry. We can take that off their plate. Hey, let us go do the first pass. We're going to understand at least the technical mapping a little better. Let's go test a few out and then tweak it as we go. So those are some of just like quick examples of, how we function in the works, at the ground level.
Right. Well, and being able to provide the clients with something to react to, rather than having to have them, create something from whole cloth. I can see how that really speeds the, both the project along, as well as, getting to solutioning very quick. Christy, I liked what you were saying about it goes beyond the services and the expertise go beyond hands-on keyboard technical deployment, packaging up code and QAing it and then installing and launching it. But it goes to that core business objective understanding, and really being able to overlay those business objectives with the code and the implementation, so that we bring together, not just, we installed a thing, but we're actually crafting a next generation solution with you. That makes a lot of sense. Jesse, you mentioned fractional resources is new, and that notion of fractional resources is something that is a relatively new concept across industries. How are Liventus and Consult Disrupt, deploying those fractional resources, maybe after a big lift and shift project has been done, or maybe even at the beginning? Lean in on that topic a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of our discovery that we've been doing has basically been Christy and I, just based on our 10-year of knowledge of systems that we have. I mean, Chris joins in when it comes it just depends on, we deploy resources based on subject matter expert with systems, whether if that's a current platform they're on or platform that they're going to, just because that gives us the biggest lift. Once these projects are complete, we like to stick around from a support perspective, because let's face it, a lot of these projects, you might have 100 deliverables. At some point, you're going to cut it down to 50, but those other 50 still have to be addressed. And the worst thing you can do is all of a sudden you're selling something and then half of it gets done. So we like to stick around from a support perspective, just to make sure we're seeing everything through all the way. So that's, hopefully that helps answer that question, Billy.
That sure does. Thank you. Well, let's pause here for a moment. I want to address those of you in the audience who are here joining us live. Again, thank you for being with us. And I do invite you to join into the conversation by using your Q&A panel in the our app. You can type in your questions, and we will see those questions immediately as they pop up. So again, thanks for being here if you're joining us live. And if you're watching on demand, thank you for taking some time out this afternoon or this day for you. And I hope this conversation is edifying for you. Well, gang, let's dive into a little bit more of the deep weeds here and turn to the topic of digital transformation. As a marketer, I'm very well aware that this is an overused, kind of buzzwordy term. It's still a real topic in our, in our industry, in our environment. Dan, how does Liventus approach this concept of digital transformation with your clients and your prospects?
Yeah, so definitely one of those buzzwords, and probably, depending on who you ask, maybe you get a lot of different answers on what it really means, but because it can kind of be all encompassing. But regardless, we approach it by looking at business outcomes, right? So it's not just the technology ones for technology's sake. But so before we talk about technology tools and solutions, we want to understand things like, where are decisions getting stuck within your business? What processes, or where the process is breaking down, and where's the data breaking down, and how does that impact the business, and what manual work and inefficiencies are we uncovering, and what's creating risk, right? So once business problems and outcomes are identified, priorities and the tech roadmap and the digital transformation becomes more clear, and the technology really becomes what it's always meant to be, is a tool to get us to the business outcome that we want. And so from there, we're going to take a methodical approach, focusing on incremental improvements. Another great term, don't try to boil the ocean at once. So I think taking those steps and that approach is how you can take on a digital transformation or modernization or whatever you want to call it, and be successful at it.
Yeah, I really like that idea of technology as the tool that gets us to the solution. It should not be inverted, right? Tech is really the solution. So you talked about starting the digital transformation process by seeking to understand the workflow bottlenecks, the process slowdowns parts first, and to document those and to address those. I guess for the wider group, how do you add on to that and move from the bottleneck identification, the slowdown identification, or the risk identification, to start to craft a technology and process combined solution for your clients? And anybody, Christy.
I'm happy to jump in.
Yeah.
So one of the things that I think is really important is to understand the problem that's trying to be solved, and maybe some of the root cause for why it's possibly not working, or maybe just what the intention is if it's something new. To really get to the crux of what are we trying to get to, what's the end goal, and then let's back up from there.
So starting with why rather than starting with the what. Okay, that makes sense. Yeah,
exactly. And then you can get to the how, right? And then possibly even to the who, because a lot of workflow and processes, need to have all of those things covered. And so I think really having a true understanding for what that looks like first and foremost. It's not just about, here's the steps that we want to take, so help us make the buttons work. It's about, what are we trying to achieve as a business? What is the strategy of this process? What are we trying to get to at the end of the day? And does the button pushing actually get us there? And if it doesn't, then we need to take a step back and pause. Sure. and redesign, or rethink, reimagine, right? That's a lot of what the transformational piece, I think, is a part of, right? And when you enter a technology project, sometimes it's really not about the technology. Sometimes the change management piece is more about the people and the process than it is about the actual pieces of technology. You have to get those foundational things right in order for you to actually get to a really great technical platform and technical solution.
Sure.
And I think that those things are they're important along the way.
Well, I like the idea of, there's at Solifi, we do a lot of, technological improvement, some innovation. We're, adding in new features and functions, which create advantages and benefits, but we're not out there all the time on the front lines understanding how and where the new buttons or the new UI or the new feature workflows that are, automated are actually connecting to a particular, customer or prospect challenge, whether it's optimizing or creating some new business opportunity for them. And I think that's, connecting that why. What are you trying to get to? What are you trying to do with what the technology has to offer is really the secret sauce. And that's a really important reason why, and why I'm excited about the partnership announcement between Liventus and Consult Disrupt and Solifi.
And Billy, one of the things that I think Solifi does extremely well, right, is document new features, new functions, giving your clients the ability to turn things on and off, right? But I will tell you, and this goes back to kind of what Jesse was referring to in discovery and in technical review, as well as just fractional type work. We make it our job to know and understand what new things are coming. That's why our partnership is so important to us, is helping the clients, because a lot of times they don't have the chance or opportunity. The day is moving so fast to read your release notes and know, oh, I have this business problem that I'm trying to solve, and this new feature might work, right? So in our conversations with our clients, it's good to have all of that background and kind of be teed up for those types of conversations, so that we can bring those solutions in company with you to the client.
And that really gets to that notion of discovery and starting by understanding the objectives, and then bringing in your experience and awareness of the deep details of what the technology platforms have to offer, or what's new and what's available. That makes a lot of sense. Let's dive into the topic of data conversions, which is a really big part of successful migrations and system upgrades and lift and shifts. The data conversions can be a really big and scary task. Jesse, I think you talked about, hey, there's 500 deliverables or 100 deliverables, and we have to figure out how to do it. Data conversion is usually one of those non-negotiables. What makes, and maybe Chris, will get you back into the conversation here, because you talked about conversion and mapping confusion, but what are some of the processes that you go through to help kick off the data conversion process and kind of establish a good roadmap for making that risk-free or with reduced risk?
Never risk-free.
Right, sure.
Yeah, so we've come in at projects at different times, right from the start, where you're kind of still gathering, the sale, the contract's just been signed with the company. And we've also come 2 years in. So every project's different, and you got to kind of get down there and ask, okay, what are your goals for getting live? Why do you need to get live? How soon do you get live? What's your budget? And so we kind of start with that, because that kind of determines, I always say there's 3 different types of conversions. There's a balance forward, going to get you live as quick as possible. But there's pros and cons to each one. A full history conversion with payment history, that's going to take a little while. Hopefully you have the people on staff that can dedicate time to it. And the amount of conversion the testing is probably going to be a little bit higher. So first, just find out with the executive staff and where the project is there fatigue? What's going to be the best approach for you? And then taking that and starting the process down. Okay, let's start looking at the mapping. Again, do you have people on staff? A lot of times these companies are a little bit smaller, so they don't have the people that can do their day job, but also a conversion and reconciliation. So how are we going to allocate it? Who's going to be responsible for UAT and kind of signing off? And that's where we can take fractions of it, like Christy said, like Jesse said. We could take it all on. So we kind of work through that just to kind of get to the who's going to be responsible. We could put names on paper and say, okay, these are your roles, these are what you're going to do, and start to move forward with the process.
Sure. What are some of those elements that are delaying projects when it comes to, conversion mapping or conversion readiness? What are you seeing there in the sense of, not naming names, but in, helping, clients and prospects who are listening or watching this webinar, give them some things that they may be able to avoid?
Yeah, I would say I'll go real quick, and then Christy, Jesse, Dan, but sometimes they'll hand it to their IT team, data conversion. Well, I can take data out of one system, put into another. There's good mapping guides and whatnot, but they don't understand the data. You know, you can go from a very unstructured system like QuickBooks, which we did a conversion off of. Well, the data can be in multiple places. There's no guardrails. So it makes it really tough to how to get it out. But they trust IT, and IT is good. I would trust IT too, but they don't understand the data anomalies and some of the different concepts, like balloon payments were supported in a system. So they put in a UDF. Well, nobody knew that, but that needs to be part of the payment schedule. So now you got to go somewhere, extract it out, and put it in a certain spot. But yeah, the list is endless. But anyways, talked enough, Christy. I know you have.
I have deep details on data conversion type stuff that I could talk about all day. It's like a whole nother webinar. I think to Chris's point about having a thought or a decision, a solid decision on the direction to go for strategy, right? The conversion strategy. How much data, at what point do you bring it in, those types of things. So I think he hit the nail on the head there. I would say the other things that are maybe holding things up or just things to think about are things like having a really good basic understanding and maybe even expectation around how clean is your data. Is it structured? Is it unstructured? Is it concatenated together in all sorts of fields? That is where things get held up. And finding those along the way, right, are things that do trip up a project, right? We can usually react to them pretty quickly once we know them, but it's knowing about them that's really sometimes the biggest discovery there. I think setting an expectation around timeline for data mapping is really important to Chris's point about mapping, right? Sometimes depending upon the amount of data you're bringing or the complexity of what you already have, the timeline sometimes doesn't meet the expectation, right, to get the work done. And that goes back to not just resources, not just, I want to say warm bodies, but it goes back to working with the data and discovering where you've got inconsistencies, right? Or where you have challenges. The other thing I would say is having a really good reconciliation strategy. What's most important to you? Do you care about, reconciling one financial field or 20 financial fields? Do you care about addresses and names? Right? Do you need to do some sort of a selective review of what the data looks like once it's been brought over? So, that type of test criteria and acceptance criteria is really important to sort of strategize before you even get into it. Otherwise, you're learning it along the way.
And learning it along the way can really interrupt or disrupt, not in a good way, a project, and certainly it has timeline impacts and cost expense impacts as well. Yeah,
it most certainly creates a lot of noise. Sometimes what it also does is it requires us to involve more people or more subject matter experts that may not have necessarily been prepared to be in that situation. And so at least we can talk about who's the most well-equipped person to be dealing with review, right? Even if it's not just running reports and looking at, anybody can match up data. It's a matter of when it doesn't match, what do we do about it, right? And those decision makers should be kind of sought out prior to a crisis. And then the last and final thing I'll say is just based on your data, your conversion strategy of how much data and what to bring over, then you have to decide, just to kind of, it's not just about day one, we got the data over, it reconciled, we're good to go. What are you going to do with the remainder of the data? Do you need to archive it? Do you need to put it somewhere? Do you need to retain it? Do you have compliance related, considerations, whether you're, a big bank or whether you're a small company, whether you have, a parent that requires you to do something with it? You need to have a strategy around archive and retention as well. And that all hinders on what your conversion strategy looks like as well.
So if I were to net these out, that's kind of 5 best practices. It's one, really lean into, before a project starts, on having a good understanding of your data. Do a data inventory. What's the structure? What's the cleanliness? What needs to improve? What is good to go as is? Second is to have a good timeline or an expectation around the timeline of the data mapping project. Third is to have a sense of data priority, what to bring over, what it's okay to leave behind. Fourth, if I heard correctly, was good user acceptance criteria set out ahead of time, so we know what success or what good looks like, and then can keep moving forward, and we avoid scope creep by adding the next, bell or whistle or, thing turned sideways, right? And then the fifth one was, hey, what is your archive and retention strategy? What are you doing with the rest of the data? And that's going to bring in compliance, as well as data storage and maybe other internal objectives or projects around data in general. Did I get those? Inventory, timeline, priority, UAT criteria, and archive and retention strategy?
Yeah, I think you nailed it.
Yeah, and a lot of the times, Billy, like, we come in and people are like, "Oh, I want this," and then we just kind of leverage doing 200 of these over the last 20 years and be like, "Here's the pros, here's the cons." Like Chris said, sometimes with QuickBooks or some of those smaller platforms, it's hard to write scripts to automate that testing. Sure. By leveraging some Liventus resources, we sometimes have to knock it out manually, and we can do that because we have the horsepower to do that type of work. Ideally, we want to automate as much as possible, but some things just can't be automated.
Sure. Well, gang, this has been a really great discussion, some really good practical tips here. Let's move into the third and final part of our discussion here as we wrap up, which is kind of more of a speed round, short answers. I want to kind of open this up to everybody here. Many systems that you go into have a lot of customizations and bespoke code, bespoke workflows, and processes that have accreted over the years. This can be a really overwhelming task, both from a budget standpoint and just a level of effort standpoint, when customers think, well, geez, I've got all this sprawl. How do you guys go in and help the customers understand how to eat the elephant? What do they need to keep? What do they need to kill? What do they need to update? What's your kind of quick, I know it's a huge question, but what's the quick hit answer there?
So you look like you're going to say something, but I'm happy to take it.
I'm going to let Dan have the
Yeah, Dan, let's start with you.
Eat the elephant, was that your term? So, a lot of these organizations, so many enterprises, so many businesses, they don't end up with these complexities overnight, right? They build over time, over years, and with their own business rules, with the processes, which aren't necessarily bad, and workarounds form over time, and so we're going to come in and we're going to help by starting to do a technology review with business initiatives in mind, and that's going to help separate out what's truly mission critical, versus what's not, and build a roadmap and create a realistic roadmap that prioritizes, what needs to be kept, what needs to be retired, what we can modernize, what we need net new, and that's going to be a lot less overwhelming. It's going to start, talking about that whole data conversation. I think a lot of people struggle to make decisions because it's a paralysis of overwhelming things that they need to take on. And that's why we're here. We're here to help navigate that, eat the elephant, if you will, and come in and do a review, help prioritize, and help manage that entire process.
Jesse, how about you?
Quick enough? Did that answer it?
Yeah, that was pretty good. Jesse or Christy?
Go ahead, Christy.
I was just going to say I would piggyback off of what Dan said around tech review, and part of that tech review that I think is really important these days, especially with legacy clients, is what's changed in the software package, right? So, Billy, you mentioned, the introduction of the idea for moving on-prem to, a hosted solution. A lot's changed, and so a lot of clients haven't seen what's changed, and what necessarily they could be doing. If you're bringing on a brand new system like a lease path, right, that's a huge radical change, right? So what's new, what's different? And I would ask them, what is your flexibility for change? Just because you have 15 steps to process a payoff doesn't mean you still need 15 steps to process a payoff, right? You might only now need 10. And are you flexible to that, right? Is your mind open enough to, to tweak, your processes around the technology that already exists? And then I would also say the one other thing that maybe wasn't mentioned yet is table stakes. What can you live with and what can't you live without, right? And so, just understanding what those table stakes look like so that you kind of have the premise of this is now a guiding principle in the project. And we will stand by that as we walk through the project and we make decisions around it. So that would be my input.
Yeah, the only thing I want to add to that, Billy, is change management's real, right?
Sure. Yeah.
These projects are a lot easier if everyone's rowing in the same direction. So we make it kind of a point of emphasis that when we're doing these technology reviews, anyone who touches the system has a say. Because, we want to see how things are being done. If they're being done correctly, maybe they missed something, right? Maybe there was an upgrade. Maybe there's a configuration challenge. A lot of times people just want to blame the software, and a lot of times it's not on the software. It's they missed an upgrade, or there's a configuration change, or just there was something that they did 15 years ago and they just don't do it anymore. Sure. So that's why we make it a point of emphasis to make sure we talk to everyone at these organizations as much as possible. Now, granted, if they're all over the country or all over the world, that makes that a little cumbersome. I understand that with the Solifi client base, but yeah.
Chris, any last quick hits on how to eat the elephant? What have you seen work?
I just say don't eat the elephant. Go find a couple little rabbits first. You're never going to be successfully that elephant.
Get some quick success under your belt,
and then I think the ball will kind of start rolling as you get some of those small successes, and you'll figure out what's really important.
Building on successes is really important to build up that momentum. I really like that approach. Well, gang, we're wrapping up here. Dan and Jesse and Christy and Chris, thank you so much for your time. Dan, if people want to engage with Liventus and Jesse with Consult Disrupt, where do they go to kind of reach out to you guys and be like, hey, I need help. I need help with these 5 data migration tips that Christy talked about, or I've got a project that we've been wanting to do. How do they get the ball rolling with you guys?
Yeah, so thanks. Very easy. You can just go to liventus.com/Solifi. You can also put a comment here. If you're listening live, put a comment that you want us to reach out to, and we will. My email address, are we listing emails or contact information on any slides?
Not in this presentation. We can certainly have it on the
it's very, you can just, it's very easy to reach us, liventus.com, liventus.com.
And right there behind you on screen too. So that
there you go.
Yeah. Great. Yeah. Terrific. Well, gang, thank you so much for your time this morning. For those of you who have joined us live, thank you very, very much for being with us today. And again, if you're watching on demand, please do reach out to liventus.com/Solifi or look in the description here from the on-demand webinar, and we'll have all of the contact right down below. On behalf of Solifi, on behalf of Liventus and Consult Disrupt and our esteemed panelists today, I'll say thank you very much and goodbye. Have a great week, everybody.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you.